What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk about one of the most interesting teams and situations in the entire league right now in the Golden State Warriors. This was originally going to be one of my full recap videos, but I spent a lot of time yesterday traveling, so I didn't get to watch all the games like I typically like to do before making the recaps. So recaps will probably be back tomorrow, but for today, we're just going to focus on this Warriors-Kings game, and in particular, the Golden State Warriors. Don't worry, Kings fans, video about y'all is coming at some point soon. It's been a very weird year or so for Golden State. They came off of 2022 winning a championship to 2023 beginning with Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole in the face. They couldn't win a road game the entire year, never looked like themselves outside Chase Center. Then they go into the playoffs and they win a really tough first round series against the Kings, but lose in the second round, falling before the finals in the playoffs for the first time in the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson era. It was weird to see, and since that moment, people have been talking about the dynasty ending. Is it falling apart? Is this their last dance of sorts with these guys? While the Warriors tried to go ahead and bolster things in the offseason, bringing in Chris Paul, trading away Jordan Poole to get a more veteran, experienced ball handler off the bench to help with those Steph Curry-less minutes. They brought in a couple of veteran guys. They brought back Draymond Green, keeping the core intact, signing him out of free agency. And for the first few games, it looked pretty good. They started the year 6-2. The Chris Paul experiment was going well. They were winning a lot of the non-Steph Curry minutes, which is not typical of this Warriors team. And it felt like, hey, this team might be back and they might again be one of the top teams in the Western Conference. Since then, it's been really rough. They've dealt with a lot of inconsistencies, very up and down play from some role players. There's a big contract conversation that's looming over them that we'll talk about in a moment. Steve Kerr's been making some weird decisions, and it all culminated last night in a game against the Sacramento Kings. This was a big one for both sides. It had big in-season tournament implications, where if the Warriors won by, I think it was 12 or 13 or more, they would advance, and if the Kings won or just lost by less than that margin, they would be the team that advanced to the quarterfinals, winning their group. So it had big implications, and for the first half, the Warriors were playing maybe the best basketball I've seen from them this entire season. Steph doing his typical thing, stuffing the stat sheet, playmaking, scoring, knocking down big shots. He was cooking out there, looking like the top 5 player that he is. Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, who have both been very inconsistent so far, were knocking down shots, playing high-level basketball. Draymond Green made his return after the 5-game suspension, and he was going ahead and playing great defense. He was playing really well as his offensive connector role that he's always been really good at in this Warriors dynasty run. The team as a whole seemed to have improved defense. The offensive cohesion was there. Guys were hitting shots. They took a 24-point lead in the second quarter and entered halftime up 17. They were looking really good. This is a great Kings team at home where they have one of the best home court advantages in the league in terms of their fan atmosphere. It felt like the Warriors were going to get a big win, and if they kept up this pace, if they won by this double-digit margin, they could not only get a win on the win books, get out of the losing column, get away from this really rough stretch that they're on, but they could advance the next round of the in-season tournament with a blowout win over a very good Kings team. This seemed like it could be a win that would really transform their season and start to turn things around. But if they had held on to that lead and didn't lose, I wouldn't be making this video. So let's go ahead and talk about what went wrong. First thing that went wrong for them were a couple of injuries. Chris Paul and Gary Payton both left this game due to injury at one point or another. Chris Paul doesn't play at all in the second half. GP2 was curling around a screen, or he was chasing around the screen, one of the two things, and he ends up grabbing at his calf. It was a non-contact injury, hobbled off, never came back to the game. Supposed to get an MRI at some point here soon, so fingers crossed that he's okay. Both of them really, because they need both these guys. They play integral roles on this team, and both have had injury issues in their recent careers, so hopefully they're both good. But those injuries did factor into this game a little bit, but even still, I don't think those injuries are the big reason why they lost. They still had a big lead really throughout a majority of this game, and in the fourth quarter, with about a minute left, they were up 5. Like, they should still win this game even with those injuries. Really, the reason they lost was inconsistency on both sides of the ball, turnovers, and a lot of strange coaching decisions from Steve Kerr. Let's talk about the inconsistency first. This team has been wildly up and down this entire season. Defensively, first half looked really good. They were locked in, disciplined for the most part. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was holding up well against a great Kings offense. In the second half, they start fouling a lot of frustration fouls, particularly from Draymond Green. There was one stretch in the fourth quarter where he gets a technical foul for complaining and then follows it up immediately with a big-time frustration foul. Malik Monk, like, at half court, he wasn't even close to the basket. It didn't give him free throws or anything, but the Kings were getting a lot of free throws. They were getting to the line a bunch. Why push them any closer to the bonus to let them keep doing that in that moment? I just didn't understand that. There were a lot of ticky-tack foul calls. I didn't agree with a lot of the officiating in this game. Just felt overall officiated poorly. But at the same time, I see a lot of Warriors fans blaming the officials as the pure reason why they lost this game. That's not the case. Like, sure, the Kings got, I think, 12 more free throws over the course of the game, which is a decent margin. But when you take a look at the makes, the Kings were bricking a lot from the line. They only made 27 free throws, while the Warriors made 26. So they had a 1-point advantage at the line at the end of things. Hitting free throws was not the reason the Warriors lost. Sure, a lot of the fouls were kind of, again, ticky-tacky calls, but they weren't destroying you in terms of points at the line, so there's other reasons. And a lot of the fouls were just fouls. They've been very undisciplined this season, one of the highest fouling teams in the entire league in terms of fouls per game. Then we get to the offense. Like I said, first half, Steph, Klay, Wiggins knocking down all their buckets. They're looking great out there. It looks like the Warriors offense that we've been hoping to see this entire season. But in the second half, and particularly in the fourth quarter, completely dried up. None of them could buy a bucket. In the fourth quarter, Steph Curry, 1 of 5 from the field, 5 points, 2 turnovers. Klay Thompson, 0 for 1, went 1 for 5 in the entire second half, just 3 points. Andrew Wiggins, 1 for 5 in the fourth quarter for 3 points. Their top 3 guys, none of them could score. Really, the only guy who was giving them any offense in the fourth quarter was Moses Moody, who was fantastic. Over the course of the 7 minutes and 34 seconds that he played, the Warriors scored 12 points as an entire offense. You know how many of those Moses Moody scored? 11. He went perfect shooting from the field, 4-4, 3 of 3 from deep for 11 points in those 7 minutes. He is the sole reason why the Warriors were staying at all afloat over that stretch. Other guys were bricking easy looks, shots that they typically make, but Moses Moody could not miss. Even when it was after a foul and he was just shooting the ball for fun, it was nothing but nylon. He was on fire, and so it feels like he probably deserves a spot in that closing lineup. Keep him in the game, ride the hot hand. But instead, he gets benched. And this brings me to Steve Kerr, who has always been kind of a weird coach in my mind. I've never been able to figure out, is he like a really, really good coach, or is a lot of it the talent? I kind of stick in the middle sometimes, where I think he is a good coach, but not like a great coach. So far this season, he has incredibly frustrated me. He benched Moses Moody in this one, like I said, on fire, could not miss. For Klay Thompson, he said after the game that he felt he had to get Wiggins in, who was the direct sub. He put Wiggins in for Moody, but put Wiggins in for Klay in that situation. Klay was really struggling. The defense isn't there. The shot making isn't there. Klay wasn't providing much at all. And Wiggins was good defensively. Like, they needed him down the stretch. But Klay's just not been good this year. Ride the hot hand in Moses Moody. I understand Klay's your vet. You trust him. He's done a lot of things in big moments before. But in this game, Moses Moody was clearly the better option. He should have stuck with him, and he didn't go ahead and do that. And that's always been a problem with Steve Kerr. He's stubborn and trying to continue to ride the usual guys rather than giving these young guys, the guys that might be part of the new era that you're building, an opportunity to go ahead and help win this game. That was one of 2 big decisions that Steve Kerr made in this game that I really didn't like. The other one came with about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter when Steph Curry gets called for an offensive foul kicking out on a 3-point attempt. In real time, it felt like an offensive foul. On the slow-mo replay, again, felt like an offensive foul, but Steve Kerr goes ahead and decides to challenge anyways. I understand if you win and you get 3 free throws for Steph, which he's knocked down, he's going to hit those, and you probably end up getting a lead that the Kings might not be able to overcome. But he used their final timeout to make this challenge on a play where it was very clearly not going to get overturned. So of course they lose, and now they have no timeouts left for 3 minutes at the end of a very close game when they could desperately need that in a variety of situations, especially against a Kings team that loves to run up and down the court and could very well tire you out, and you just need a timeout to drop a play, to get some easy offense, to just give your guys a breather. They don't have that, and that ends up coming to bite them in the butt really, really clearly. With about 40 seconds left, the Warriors inbound the ball up 4 points. All they have to do is hit one more bucket or get one more stop, and this game is probably over. They inbound the ball to Steph Curry, who gets trapped. Nobody's coming to him. This would be a great time to call a timeout, but they don't have one, so he tries to pass it ahead to Klay. Malik Monk intercepts it, ends up hitting a sidestep 3, cuts the deficit to 1. Would have been really nice if they could have called timeout and prevented Steph Curry from throwing that turnover. Then later on, the Kings end up taking the lead off a crazy Malik Monk bucket. Like, Wiggins played perfect defense, there's just nothing you can do about that, and the Warriors have the ball, they're inbounding it with about 7 seconds left. Now would be a great time to call a timeout and drop a play, but you don't have one because you challenged a call that was never going to get overturned for no reason. So Steph just runs the ball into the half court, forces up a shot, he misses. He did have Klay kind of open, probably could have hit him, maybe he ends up making that shot, but regardless, they lose this game. And a number of times where it feels like they could have used a timeout, they just didn't have one. I'm not saying the loss is all on Steve Kerr, but those decisions are a big reason why they didn't go ahead and win this game. He's been very unimpressive to me as a coach so far this season. Not a lot of good adjustments, sticking way too much to his guns in situations where he couldn't. it just feels like he's trying to stay with this old style that they used to play that doesn't really work as well anymore with the personnel that they have. And that's another problem with all the turnovers they have. They've always been this fast-paced motion offense, turnover-prone team because they throw the ball around so much, they run in transition. They just don't really have the personnel to do that anymore. They don't have the three-point shooting, the offensive consistency to overcome this mass amount of turnovers, the amount that they foul. It's always been something that's existed with them, but they don't have the ability to win in spite of it as much at all anymore. The margin of error is way smaller for this team. Their usual stars just really aren't producing. Steph Curry's still been really good, had 29, 10, and 6 in this game. Really, the one thing with Steph that's bothered me has been the assist-to-turnover ratio. 4.1 assists to 3-point turnovers is bad. That's the highest turnover mark and lowest assist mark of his entire career. I think part of the reason why the assists are so low is because Chris Paul is handling the ball more, taking care of more of those playmaking duties. But even still, Steph has to be better in terms of taking care of the ball. I think they should use him more on-ball, more scenarios, which is tough because Chris Paul can't really shoot right now, but that's something they're going to have to figure out because right now it's just not working. It's not giving them the best offense. But outside of Steph Curry, like Andrew Wiggins having the worst season of his entire career so far, had a great game against the Kings, 29, 10, and 3. But on the season as a whole, putting up 11.8 points per game, 4.1 boards, 1.1 assist, 41% shooting from the field, 25% from deep, 56% from the line. He's not scoring from anywhere consistently. He's had some good games as of late, so hopefully he's finding his footing, but it's still this bad. The defense has been really hit or miss. There was a report that some people were mad about his conditioning. I don't know if there's truth to that, but it feels like they're not at all getting the Wiggins that they got a couple of years ago when they signed him to that big contract after he was an integral part, probably the second best player for a majority of that season on that 2022 title team. He was so integral to everything they did. He doesn't look anything like that player anymore. Then you've got Klay Thompson, who's also playing some of his worst basketball, putting up just 15 points per game, 40% shooting from the field, 36% from deep. Looks a step slower out there. The defense is non-existent. His shot selection has been awful, which it kind of has been for a majority of his career for most players, but because Klay is really good at hitting those tough threes, it's never felt that bad. But at this point, it feels like he's shooting them out of games. He just doesn't feel like he can be that consistent second option that the Warriors need anymore, him or Wiggins. So the question is, who steps up for this team? Some nights it is Wiggins, some nights Klay steps up, but we haven't gotten consistent play from either of them, which has led to Steph having to carry the load. And some of the young guys do sometimes step up. You know, Dario Saric, more of a veteran player, but he's had some good moments. Moses Moody has had some good moments. Podziemski, I don't know why he didn't get in this game with GP2 and CP3 hurt. Another example of Steve Kerr not really going to the young guys. But there's just not nearly enough consistency on this roster. They don't have a lot of guys really outside of Steph Curry that can give them consistent production. And with Klay Thompson in particular, things get even more interesting when you think about the fact that he's on an expiring contract. If he keeps playing like this, despite being a 4-time champion with this team, someone that they want to be a Warrior for life, do they re-sign him? Do they offer him a big-time contract because he's been so good? Or do they take a look at the production and say, the best we can give you is, X amount of money? And how's Klay going to feel about that? Is he going to feel spited by the fact that the team that he's won a number of championships with isn't willing to pay him a lot of money? Can he find a team out there that's willing to do so? And will he walk, not being a Warrior for life, and ending this core group of Steph, Klay, Dre, that has won them so many titles? That's something that's very much a possibility, and that's why it really feels like this dynasty's coming to an end. I could see a path where the Warriors win another ring in the Steph Curry era because they say put like Andrew Wiggins in a package using his big time salary with some of their young pieces, maybe like Moody, Kuminga, Podziemski, like some combo of those guys, some draft picks, and they're able to bring in another all-star caliber player to put next to Steph. I think that's a real possibility. But when you talk about the core of the dynasty, Steph, Klay, Draymond, I don't see these three guys all being on the roster and then winning a championship at all. I just don't think it's going to be done anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if things fell apart pretty quickly from here. I don't blame Bob Myers, their former GM, a longtime executive, for leaving before this season because it's very clear that things are about to get really tough. They might have to sever their relationship with Klay Thompson, who gave them so many great years. They might have to trade away some of their core pieces. What happens with Steve Kerr? He hasn't been good as of recently as a coach. Do they think about firing him? Which I don't think they will because he's won so many titles with them, but maybe that's the right call to make. They've got a lot of tough things coming up, and that's part of why they're in trouble. I don't know what they do about these tough decisions. How do they get themselves back in the win column? How do they get back to contention? And is it even possible while keeping this core group of guys intact? But for right now, the main focus for them has to be getting back on track, getting some wins. They've got a relatively easy stretch coming up. They do play the Celtics and the Suns before Christmas, but outside of them, they have 3 games against the Clippers, who are currently reeling. They've got the Blazers, the Nets, the Wizards, the Blazers again. they've got some very winnable games over this stretch. We'll see if they can put together some W's. Can Klay get back on track, and Wiggins? Can they just put together a competent stretch of basketball for any extended period of time? That's really what I'm looking for in these upcoming games. And if they can't, we're going to have some serious conversations about them maybe making a big-time trade. I've seen a lot of Warriors fans call it trade Klay Thompson. I don't see any way they do that, but maybe they find a way to package Wiggins and some of those other pieces to go out there and get a decent star player. Maybe a Siakam becomes available, an OG Anunoby. Maybe they consider the Zach LaVine trade. I don't really know what they're going for, but they might have to do something like that if they really want to go ahead and salvage the season. If they don't win a lot during this stretch, we'll see what happens. But for right now, those are my thoughts on the Golden State Warriors. Let me know down below in the comments what your takeaways were. What's the problem with this team? What do they need to do? Do they need to shake things up? Should they bring back Klay Thompson in the offseason? Should they try and trade him now? I'd love to hear all your thoughts, because it really is interesting to watch this dynasty in its twilight and to think about any potential ways that they can prolong it, because it feels like they have continuously found ways, but this really may be the end. So yeah, appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.